What's up, everyone? This is Chris back with the Bimmer Barn, and today we're going to be doing the most anticipated mod on my E39 M5 wagon, and that is the Airlift Performance Front Strut Kit. So if you haven't already seen our previous video, we already did the rear suspension using some Slam Specialties rear springs and some Bilstein shocks. So go ahead, I'll put a link to that video in one of the cards up above, but you can check that video out. Now we're going to be focusing on the front end of the car, doing some Airlift Performance front struts, and we're also going to be changing our Airlift controller system from the wireless one to the wireless Air kit, and that's going to give us individual front and rear control of our bags. I hope you guys are as excited as I am for this video, because I can't wait to get this car fully riding on brand new air suspension. I can't wait to see what it drives like and share the process with you guys. So without further ado, let's get straight into today's video.
So now we're going to go ahead and start unboxing the Airlift Performance Kit for the front suspension. Now this is just the front kit from the E39 sedan. The rear kit for the sedan wouldn't work on the Touring, obviously, and Airlift Performance does not make a rear Touring kit. So you do have to find your own solution, but if you check out my video on doing the rear setup, you'll see that the Slam Specialties 5 bag works. So here we are unboxing. We have the installation manual. This is really good. We're going to reference this later. It's got torque specs and everything in it. And since everything is just so tightly packed in the box here, we're going to go ahead and lay it all out on the table and then run through it. Now, I recognize the stickers here. These struts are obviously made by BC. They have really nice bodies. BC makes some great quality parts, and probably I think Airlift makes this upper section, and I believe the top hats as well. So we have some camber adjustment in the top hats here. It's hard to say how many degrees this is. These are really just alignment marks so that you can get the car even from side to side. These are fully solid, it looks like, with a spherical bearing here, and it's already torqued down. Just these nuts here are loose. It's already torqued down, so that's going to make things really easy to install. Now over here we have the air lines that go to the bottom of the spring. So these need to be routed, with the brake lines or with the ABS sensors or something like that, under the car safely. And then the other end is going to go to the fitting that goes to your standard 1/4-inch airline. And then here's our adjustment kit. So it looks like we have adjustable dampening up top, pretty standard. Looks like it says Airlift Performance there, and then a key as well to adjust the height of this. So I think that these things look beautiful. I can't wait to get them on the car. Now I'm gonna go ahead and go over this installation guide right here. Then we're gonna get under the car and I'm gonna show you guys how these things install. We're gonna route our airlines, install the air controller, the new one that we have, and then by the end of this video we should be able to air out completely on this this set of air springs.
Alrighty guys, so we are finally at the point where I can show you how I routed the airlines. Now I left all the zip ties uncut so that you guys can get a good look and see what's going on here. So behind the fender liner here, there's the air fitting, and you can see it right there. So it goes up to the strut and then comes down here, and you want to have plenty of slack here so that when the spring compresses and the suspension moves, you know, this isn't going to get in the way of anything. So I've got it tucked away here underneath the fender liner, and an 8mm underneath is going to keep that secure. Now underneath the fender liner, we have that connector that we installed, and then it goes to our 1/4" airline, which is zip tied to the subframe of the car. So we've got zip tie, zip tie, zip tie, over here, zip tie, zip tie, zip tie. So it goes all the way over here. And then again, on this side, you know, the air suspension, we have the airline coming out and then being tucked under the fender liner here. This is our main frame rail that you can see. And underneath here, we got a good look at the adapter that goes from the braided line to the 1/4" airline. And then I have our T right here, and that is gonna split the air that's coming from our compressor to the air strut on this side, and then over to the air strut, you know, that goes to the other side on the passenger. Now, obviously, by now you can tell that this is a 2-point suspension control system. So some of the advanced, you know, air control systems, they would have 4-point control, so you could individually control the air on each corner. But I don't really see the need for that right now. After all, we have a sway bar to keep the car level in the corners. And, you know, the cost of those systems is really high compared to this wireless air system that we got from Airlift Company. So we're just going to use that for now. But anyways, let's go ahead and show you, since we have the both lines that go to the air struts here, you can see the air line that goes along our fuel lines, and it's going to be zip tied all the way going to the back of the car. Now here at the back of the car, we followed the fuel lines, went around the gas tank, wanted to avoid as much heat as possible. Then we went under the plastic fender liner here, around the subframe. We have it zip tied to a strap there. Then it goes above the subframe here, and finally makes its way into the chassis through that rubber plug there. Now, you see some splatter from my axle, just some extra grease there. Don't worry about that, I've yet to clean it off. But you can see that we made use of the factory rubber plug going through the chassis, and I was able to get the airline to go through it. So let's go ahead and look inside the trunk of the car now and see how the airlines are routed through there. So there's our airline coming out of the trunk. Now, obviously you can see the original air fittings from the rear suspension. So those are right there and they get teed together here. But here's our main supply for the front. Both of the airlines come through this bracket. I have a lot of extra line here because this is not a permanent setup, obviously. I've even got a blanket in the trunk here. So that way there's not a lot of noise created and it kind of keeps all this from moving around and creating noise and rattling. But this is essentially the setup. I've got all that extra harness there as well. Again, guys, this is a temporary setup. In an upcoming video, I'll definitely make a cool trunk setup like everyone does. So stay tuned if you want to see that video in the future. But I'm just going to go through the wiring here. It has a power and a ground. Power gets tapped into a constant 12. And then you get ground over here. I'm using like a little latch. And then we get our two connections. I made these, little connectors so that we can easily change out the compressor if we need to. But those have to be made. And then otherwise, everything's really easy. It goes to our manifold. Our manifold has the air connections that go, to our compressor and then to number 1 and number 2. And then we have our remote. So here's what our remote looks like. And if you press a button, it'll go ahead and power on. I already went and connected, paired the system together. So it's working and it's currently holding 50 PSI in the front and the rear. So we know that there's no leaks coming from the system. There are 3 different presets available. So number 1 for me is going to be all aired out. Now, minimum pressure for these air spring controllers is 5 PSI because, they're made for air springs, not for like this sort of application. So minimum pressure that we can do on this kit is 5 PSI. So that's number 1, front and rear. Number 2 is going to be 25 PSI front and rear. And number 3 is going to be 50 PSI front and rear, which is what we currently have it set to. And that's what is recommended from Airlift Performance for the front struts as the ride pressure. So they have a maximum operating pressure of 125 PSI, but they let you know that to avoid any bumpiness or bounciness that you should run the springs at 50 PSI in the front. I'm not sure if that's the same for the rear ones for the sedan, but that's the pressure that they recommend for driving. Now, if we press and hold the center button on this controller, it'll bring us to our settings menu. Now, the settings menu is pretty cool. It has a maximum air pressure that you can set. So I have it set to 100 PSI right now, but you can set it to 50 or 35 depending on what sort of airbags you're using. And then another cool thing is the compressor duty cycle. You can change that up to 100, or you can change it to a tank setup. So this is compatible with using a tank. But this is going to be set to 15 as our duty cycle because this pump right here, I think is supposed to be like a 9% duty cycle. So we have to set it to the lowest one here. Eventually though, that's nice that we can set it to a higher number because we can definitely get an upgraded compressor or even 2 so we can get this system to air up a lot faster. So now I'm going to go ahead and clip all those zip ties underneath the car, check over all the connections, and then put the wheels on the car, get it on the ground, and then we're going to go for a drive together, as well as I'm going to show you what the car looks like on a couple of these different settings. So here I inflated the bags to 60 pounds of pressure in the front and the rear, and I just want to see how much body roll it had.
and you can see that it is not a lot of body roll. It corrects itself very nicely. Now again, the recommended pressure for the front struts from Airlift Performance is 50 pounds of pressure, but I just had it overinflated there because I wanted to see how tall it could be at 60 pounds. So here's the car at about 50 pounds of pressure front and rear, and now we're going to lower it to 26 psi front and rear. And now we're going to lower it to about 5 psi front and rear, so that's like maxed out. Now there is like a bump stop on the spring perches in the rear, which keeps the back end from getting too low, like I would say dangerously low, because technically the wheels will still roll and I could probably still drive at this height, in the rear at least. The front, I'd be worried about that. But let me know if you guys want to see me remove that bump stop and we can do it and see exactly how low we can go, at least parked.
Alright guys, that is going to conclude today's video. I hope that you enjoyed watching us set up the air suspension on my E39 M5 wagon, and I'm super happy with how the results came out. You saw us adjust the suspension up and down, and it really just has like an infinite number of settings that you could leave it at to make your car look exactly how you want it to. So that's why I'm really happy that I went with an airlift setup for my car. And again, this is mainly built to be more comfortable, more of a highway cruiser, and I think that air is the perfect solution for it. Now, if you haven't yet subscribed, go ahead and do that now, because we have a lot more content planned for the E39 chassis and a lot more BMW stuff in general. In fact, in an upcoming video, we're gonna be doing a 1,600-mile road trip in this wagon right here. So stay tuned to see us make that whole journey. I'm gonna take you guys along with us and show you exactly how we get the car ready and how it performs on such a long distance trip. So I hope everyone has an awesome day, and we'll see you in the next video.